Hey guys, welcome back to Buster's Corner. I've got brother Tom on a Zoom meeting with us. Morning, Tom.
Good morning.
Tom is going to walk us through the next gen shocks for iRacing on the next gen car. A lot of good stuff. I've kind of been through it a little bit. I have a suggestion for you guys right away. Get your phone, take pictures of these slides. As Tom puts these slides up there, that's the best way to take notes. It's really good stuff. So this is for the next gen. How about the Xfinity or Truck Series, Tom? Does this apply to that stuff?
A lot of the concepts will apply in how we dissect the charts, but I have not done any particular testing on the Xfinity or trucks. But like I said, a lot of the concepts and what I'm showing here can apply to those cars as well.
Okay, very good. I'm going to take my camera out of here and I'm gonna mute my mic and give you the floor. There you go. Good luck,
All
buddy.
right, sounds good. All right, so again, like Bob said, I'm Tom. Just to quick disclaimer, I have no association to iRacing or Ohlins. Just a guy playing a game, having fun, and sharing what I'm learning along the way. So now, did you ever get the feeling you're playing whack-a-mole when you're adjusting the shocks? I know I did when I started playing with the next gen shocks, right? You start adjusting one click on the one setting and you're watching the histograms and everything's changing all over the place, and next thing you know, you're just making guesses to make your clicks, right? Brute force kind of approach. And so this gave me motivation to go and do a deeper dive in what's really going on here with these shocks. So that's what this is about. So when I got started, right, like most people, we got the iRacing Shock Tuning Guide, which is a good guide. It gives some dyno shock curve slopes that we could work with. And then the question is, okay, so how do I translate those settings into just our little 6 options to configure the shocks? So we needed more information so we can make some progress on killing this game of whack-a-mole. So I'm sharing what I've learned on this journey. So we're going to take a look at some real shocks because that's what iRacing has to model against. We're going to take a look at some real shock dyno curves and break those down so we can figure out what is that, how do we use this information into the game. And then I'm going to talk about how that translates into the Motec Suspension Histograms. And I'm going to bring up some testing results of what I call Tom's crazy idea of creating some shock curves. So those histograms, and I'll show you what I mean. It's actually pretty cool. Then based on all that learning, is there any shock tuning guidance we can come up with to help kill this game of whack-a-mole? All right, so let's take a look at some real shocks. So as I started searching the internet to figure out, okay, what are the shocks that are going into these next gen cars, I came across this Ohlins press release. They say, hey, we're the exclusive shock provider for the next gen car. Like, okay, this is awesome. Now, what they're saying here is that they're going to provide the TTR shock, but a 5-way. So for now, we're going to use the existing TTR model, which is a 4-way adjustable shock. And then, but it turns out this maps perfectly into what iRacing has given us for configuration options here. Right, so we have a high-speed compression and rebound adjusters. Hey, we got that in the game, high-speed compression rebound. Look at the low-speed adjusters. Hey, we got those settings. And I'm going, okay, so where's the slope? But turns out the TTR slopes are set by this valve that goes into the shock in the high speed, under the high speed compression rebound adjusters. Those discs and the needle valves, they compose of what provides us with the high speed compression slope and rebound settings. Now, if you watch Ohlins, there's some videos out there where the Ohlins guy is talking about the TTR Shock. He fully would expect a team to have one selection of a valve, one high speed slope curve, if you will, for the entire season, and that the shock should give them enough range of adjustment to accommodate all the tracks that they would come across. But we know in reality we're having to set that high speed compression slope, so that's okay, right? It's still pretty close of a model where we can actually build on top of this information and get a little closer to the answers we're looking for, right? So now we have a solid foundation of what's being modeled here. So now that we know what we're adjusting, let's figure out how that real shock down the curve start to look like. before we get started here, we need to clear up some terminology that's creating a little bit of confusion. So when we talk about a low speed compression or rebound setting on the shock, the low speed in that phrase does not mean the car is going slow. Low speed means the shock shaft is moving at a slower speed. This is I know it's a little bit confusing, but we need to think in terms of how fast the shock shaft is traveling, not how fast the car is traveling. We talk about a high speed compression rebound. That does not mean that the car is traveling fast. It means that the shock shaft is moving at a higher speed. Okay. Now, this is important because if you think about how a car is traveling, if I talk about low speed, you're thinking about a car is traveling, then you're going to get lost on the next slide when we talk about the dyno curves. So let's talk about that now. So this is a dyno curve example, right? That is right out of the Ohlins TTX 40 manual. This chart here this graph here is not something I made. So we're still talking about how shocks are looked at in real life. So let's go over this little chart here. So what we have is a plot of the shock performance over velocity and against force in pounds. So the x-axis gives us the velocity in 0 inches at the 0 to 10 inches per second at the end of this chart. And then it goes up from 0 to 400 pounds of force. Okay. Now the first, I'm focusing here on this red curve. Simple red curve. The first section that looks like it's actually a linear portion of the initial slope, which is at the very low speed of this shock velocity, it's going to about 0 to say a half an inch per second. This region is the nose. All right. The next section of this curve, red curve line, is the knee. And this knee is, if you will, from the low to high speed transition area. And this is curved, right? So this is called the knee section. And now we get into the straight linear sloped line of the red line. This is the slope section. Now notice that the slope is a linear line. For the most part, slopes will be linear. That's why the term slope, right? It's a predictable slope. What's really cool about using these terms is we can then say, hey, the nose section is set by the low speed compression and rebound in our game. The knee section is set by the high speed compression and rebound settings in the game. And the slope is configured by the high speed slope compression and rebound settings in the game. So now we can translate these shock dyno curves, right? The real life curves, in how we would configure those in the game. Now, Ohlins put in this crazy little shock dyno plot, if you will, into their manual because they wanted to really bring attention really quickly, as do I. The challenge that occurs when you start configuring the high speed compression and rebound, even the race car teams in real life can quickly get into a game of whack-a-mole, just like we're seeing in the game, when they start changing the high speed compression and rebound. You can see here, while the high speed compression rebound controls the knee, you can see how much of an impact it affects the low speed compression and rebound settings as well, right? So as you start to adjust the knee, you can see this nose starts going up higher and higher. And then the slope, pay attention to the slope here. The slopes, the angle of the slope lines remain consistent, but yet you can still see they will vary as well as it starts to go up, right? So we're going to come back to this. I just want to give you a quick snapshot of saying, hey, this is how we start to play with the regions. We can have more of a better concise discussion on these curves by calling them regions. And then we can also see how they start affecting each other. Okay, so now we have a solid foundation. We know the shock we're working with. We have an idea of how we can look at the shock dyno curves. Well, that's all good and dandy, but we still don't have a real shock, and we don't have a shock dyno machine. So what good is that? Well, now we're going to translate that into the game and how we can use that information. So we start by going back to the iRacing shock tuning guide. They gave us a great little diagram here that gives us an example of a good looking shock histogram. It's well balanced. You see it's a nice looking pyramid, and we have good balance between the highs and the lows. It just looks like a healthy histogram. So what I did here is, this is an example of a real histogram I generated in Motec. What I did is I went to the Iowa track with the NextGen car. I loaded up the iRacing's Iowa oval setup, and I took about 13 laps here, and I captured in this histogram laps 2 through 11, so I had 10 clean laps, right? So let me explain to this, right? So if you've never seen these histograms, on the left front, you have the left front shock velocity being plotted on samples of time, of velocity. So here you can see in the dark orange is the low speed velocity samples where the shock is moving at a slower speed. The lighter color of this histogram, right, is where the shock is traveling at a higher speed. And then you have the orange is the left front shock, the light blue is the right front shock, the purple is the left rear, dark blue is the right rear. And again, the darker shaded colors are where the shock is traveling at a slower speed versus the higher speed with the lighter colors, right? So with these histograms, now we can start applying what we've learned previously in this presentation, where now we can start identifying the regions where we have a nose, a knee, and a slope, and both on the compression and rebound side, nose, knee, slope, right? On each one of those 4 corners. So now we can start to break these histograms down. All right, so general guidance on these histograms, right? More damping will equal a slower velocity. So the more damping you have, the more darker color you'll have. Those will go up. The less damping you have, the higher velocity you'll have. To lower a bar, you lower the damping. To raise a bar, you'd increase the damping to slow that shock down, and you get a slower movement, right? Everything's connected, so one bar will most likely affect another. Now, again, we want to adjust the nose with the low speed. We adjust the nose with the low speed compression and rebound. We adjust the knee with a high speed compression and a rebound, and we adjust the slope with a high speed compression, slope, and rebound, right? So we just went from the real world shock, right? Identified how we're adjusting the shock. We took the real world shock dyno plot, if you will, and we just mapped it into what we have in our game in using real world terms. Now we can start to have it, we're starting to build a foundation of knowledge here that we can get to stop playing whack-a-mole, okay? Now let me show you how we took those histograms and create some shock curves with them. So what I did was, using all what we're building up on top of the information we've learned, said, hey, well, we can connect some dots here. We said, okay, well, here's our peak on this bump side, compression side. Let's put a line from 0 to there. And here we can identify the knee pretty close. So let's create a region here that we call the knee. Slope, high-speed slope down at the bottom. Okay. Now, if I remove that, the histogram behind it, what I got left is what I call Tom's iRacing shock curve, right? Hey, this gets to be pretty useful. And now we're going to go in and take this concept and apply it to some testing results. Okay, so again, this testing is not produced by iRacing. This is me just playing, and I'm sharing what I've been learning. So what I did was the tester's objective was to observe some slope characteristics as settings were increased. So I ran test laps again with the NextGen car at Iowa, same setup, the Iowa Open setup, only changing the shocks. So I'm saying this so in case somebody wants to go out there and practice these and do this, they can repeat the test. On each shock configuration, I did about 14 laps and I captured 2 at 11 laps, so I got 1 clean lap. What I did was ran 3 sets of tests to isolate the high-speed slope, isolate the low speed, and isolate the high speed. All right. So I'm going to take you through the easy ones first, and then we're going to get to the harder one at the end here. So this is the first one I did was high-speed slope compression rebound test. This forms our baseline. So what I did was I had to set everything to 1. Again, we can identify the low speed compression rebound, the nose. We can identify the knee, and we can identify the slope region. Okay, so far so good. But now I want to call out, pay attention here, these scales, right? Because the scales on my test, on these test reports, they may vary, but sometimes these, like the orange, will stay at 3,000, even though the scale will change. So I went out and did my 14 more laps with my high-speed slope set at 5. That's the blue line here. And I plotted that against the previous curve where everything was set to 1. And we can start to observe what's going on here, right? And starts to get really interesting. By just changing the high-speed slope, on the compression side, look at this. Our knee stays the same. I'm sorry, our nose stays the same. If summary is over here. Our knee here damping stays the same. But what's interesting here is while we increased our high speed slope to 5, we got our damping was actually dropped down to be less. Okay, remember, here's our little cheat sheet right here, because it's even hard for me to remember. High peak equals more damping, lower peaks equals less damping. So we had a lower peak here with the 5, and we dropped in damping. Now go over and look at the rebound side, right? Our nose damping increased because higher peak is more damping. Our knee damping was the same, but then our slope here was a little bit less, right? Now there is an argument here that if we had proper damping on the compression side, we should see less rebound, and we're probably seeing some of that here, right? If the damping is controlled, there'll be less rebound. That's just a natural way how things are interrelated, right? So let's go to add one more, see how it evolves. Okay, so this is where I did 10 more laps, 12 more laps, and we had the high-speed slope set at 10, okay? Now look, this is working perfectly on compression, right? We have no impact to our nose at our low-speed settings, right? It's the same. Our knee is the same. This is like perfection. We just adjusted the high-speed slope. Now, what is still interesting is that we're seeing opposite of our damping results. Okay, so that's a point of interest. Coming over here to rebound, this gets very interesting where, once again, going back to our cheat sheet, higher peaks is more damping. Okay, so as we increased our slope, our damping on rebound increased. Our knee, you could argue, it stayed pretty much the same. And then again, just like on the compression side, our slope was less. It was actually opposite of what we would have expected. We would have expected these slopes to be inverted, where green is higher than orange. Okay, now with that said, we're seeing some changes here, but this is not going to cause us to get into a whack-a-mole. We can make some adjustments here, see the rebound, maybe make some slight corrections. So this still isn't bad, all right? We got to work with this. I mean, this is spot on. That was really cool to see that compression side line up perfectly. This also validates that, what we're adjusting is working right. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Where we went to this is the low speed isolation, right? Where we're isolating just the low speed, where we're going to change the low speed, keep high speed compression rebound and high speed slope the same at 1. So this is our baseline. Again, we see the nose, knee, slope. Now we took 12 more laps, 10 more laps, and we increased with our low speed compression rebound set to 5 increased. Okay. Now this gets interesting. Our nose, which is what we are adjusting, right? We're adjusting our nose. So we're expecting a lot of changes in the nose, in the peaks here, and we're looking to keep the other regions similar to what they were from last, right? So in fact, you can see for the most part, our knees and our slopes are relatively consistent. Yeah, there's a little changes here, but we should always expect some changes because everything's interrelated, right? Let's look at that. So while we increased our damping on the compression side, on the nose of the compression, low speed, what we see is our damping is less. Okay, we saw a drop in damping, or we're expecting that blue line to be above the orange line. But on the rebound, our damping is more, right? This is what we would expect to see if we increase the damping, that the blue peaks, like our little cheat sheet says down here, high peak is more damping. We increased the damping, so we expected a higher peak. On the rebound, we got as expected, but on the compression side, it dropped. To me, this would almost start to argue whether or not the controls are inverted, but it may need more testing. So let's go to increase it one more, take that low speed compression rebound to 10. Okay. Now, once again, let's start with the easy part, right? The easy part is, which is really cool here. We did not, overall, we did not affect our high speed slope, and we did not really affect that much our high speed compression rebound, our knee section. Our knee and our slope regions of our dyno curve are holding consistent. So we changed the nose, and that's where we're expecting changes. So if you can see, the low speed compression rebound, the green line, came in almost the same as our 5 setting. Now that could be something going on there with the driving or whatever, right? But for the most part, you can see what still consists is our damping at the nose is less while we are increasing our damping settings. Our rebound is going as expected, right? We increased it to 5 and then we increased it to 10. Okay, that's performed as expected. Compression side, once again, it implies that our settings are inverse. And it could be maybe there's some other issues going on there. All right, so if we take a step back a little bit with the forest of the trees, right? Just to be clear, what is overall the high level thing is we are actually getting relatively decent expected results. We're not blowing out our curves here, okay? Our curves, you can see that the knee and the slope on both the low speed and the high speed slope settings stay relatively consistent. This is not driving us into a whack-a-mole here, right? Even if we make adjustments, I could even maybe come back and check whether or not, make sure I had my compression rebound on the correct sides. I believe I did. But overall, these are pretty stable controls and easy to manage. So let's go into the bad boy, okay? Remember that chart I showed you from the Ohlins TTX 40 manual with the crazy chart with all those slope lines, and the summary was, okay, the high speed drove them crazy. So I'm going to show you how we're not immune to the high speed craziness, okay? So we start with our baseline again. You've seen that. I'm going to call them out again to drive it home. Nose, knee, slope regions of these dyno curves. Okay, so what we did is we did it again. We took some more laps with the high speed setting at 5, okay? Hopefully you can identify already, right? One is our nose is being significantly impacted. While so what we did is we increased the damping, right? So we would expect a higher peak. That damping, the blue lines would be above the orange lines. And of course they drop lower. But at least this time, our knee section is now going in the same direction. So, and of course, we just completely blew out our nose, our low speed region on the rebound here. And those are inverted even still. All right. So let's go to one more, and now we do 10 more laps with our high speed compression rebound set to 10. Then you can see on the compression side, our nose dropped significantly. The big difference in the rebound, right? We're just completely now we're into whack-a-mole, and it's all because this high-speed compression rebound guy is just doing a number on our pretty slopes here, right? And even impacting our high-speed slope region as well, right? So our compression nose damping is less, our compression knee damping is less, everything's less than the compression. Rebound nose damping is more, and our knee and slopes are less. So this is really where it gets down to the heart of why we start to play whack-a-mole with our shock tuning attempts. So just as in real life, our high speed causes whack-a-mole, just like it did for that Ohlins called out in the real shock. So now the really cool thing about iRacing is they're capturing they did capture the modeling good enough to where we are experiencing the complexity of shock tuning in the same area as the real life teams do. So, I mean, we're getting closer and closer to real life. So now the question is, how do we manage it to kind of make some progress, right? So changing the high speed compression rebound changes everything. You got to just think like that. When you touch that control, you need to know that you're going to blow out all the work you put into that shock, right? The controls sometimes appear to be inverted. And then the nose is just completely changed. So now on these inversions that I'm seeing here, right? I'm not making a claim that they're wrong. What I'm saying is there needs to be more testing done, and discussions with iRacing needs to happen in order to confirm what we're seeing from a control inversion. It could very well be that maybe I'm doing something wrong, but at the end of the day, I'm just clicking the game and playing the game, and I'm just sharing with you why I'm going crazy. And so it's this high speed compression and rebound that drives you crazy. So iRacing shock curve summary, right? Just to start to wrap things up. The order in which you adjust your shocks is critical if you don't want to play whack-a-mole. Changing the high speed slope appears to have the least impact on low speed and high speed. Secondly, the low speed compression rebound seems to have the second least impact on the other regions. High speed changes everything. So you want to set your order correctly, right? Consider setting the high speed compression rebound first to avoid your whack-a-mole. And then in orange here, I've got low speed, high speed seem to have some control adjustments that may be opposite each other, right? And again, I want to stress that I'm not saying that there's something wrong with the game. I'm saying that there needs to be more. We need to look at those areas more to see if those controls are in fact inverted, and they could be, right? So final thoughts. Increasing damping lowers the velocity. Just remember that. Increasing the damping means that shock is going to travel slower. It's just, you think about it out loud and it makes sense to you. Inversely, lower the damping increases the velocity, right? So you get those big peaks in the histogram, then those big peaks are from a suspension that's too tight. Adjusting high speed compression rebound significantly impacts the nose, and we've talked about that. And just a couple things, stepping back a little bit further, we adjust springs for ride height and shocks for grip. Okay. The histograms are actually suspension histograms. And what we're looking at is data that incorporates all springs of the car. So those histograms are made up of the spring in the tire, the four corner springs, the front roll bar, the rear roll bar, right? Those are all built into that suspension histogram. Now, with all that said and all this work I've been talking about histograms, the histograms may not lead you to the best handling car if you have a pretty little pyramid. What you do is use those histograms, get you close to balance, and then you fine tune for handling. Because what I saw when I was doing my testing and playing with this, I've done other tests besides the ones I just shared. I could come across the fastest setup, and my histogram doesn't look all that great. So you got to still incorporate this strategy into a larger strategy of how you set up a car for for all around balanced. Okay. So with that said, that's a lot of stuff, right? And I know how I've been spending my 3 weeks. So
I'm opening this up here. Where's
okay.
There we go.
I didn't make you fall asleep, did I?
No, why would I fall asleep through stuff like that? That's all good shit.
Make you excited. I mean, dissecting dyno curves, nose, knee, slope. I mean, this is exciting stuff.
My knees hurt. My knees hurt because they're on a slope to my nose.
Gosh, this is stuff that just warms your tummy right up.
This is definitely something, and actually, you and I have tried to get this video done. I don't know, this is probably our 6th attempt, and I'm learning something new every time you go through this with me, and I'm taking more pictures. I've got more pictures, which I think I've already taken before, of all your notes and stuff like that, so I can go through it again later. But it's huge. There's a lot there to comprehend, and I've been working on my Talladega setup this morning using some of the stuff from yours, and I do like the nose, knee, and slope thing that you're putting into here. That really, for a novice like me, is like I can relate to those things, and I can see it on my histogram. I go, you know what? I don't need to adjust that bar. I need to adjust my nose.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's no longer the second bar from the right. How do I get that bar to move? I need to adjust my knees. I got wobbly knees. I got bony knees, and on one of my things, I got knees above my noses, and I don't think that's a good thing.
No. So why I wanted to start with this video is through the testing I've actually come with more advanced stuff, but this lays a foundation so that we can all start talking the same and stop talking past each other, right? The whole, hey, I'm going to adjust for low speed because I'm in the corner. Oh, no. Don't do that anymore. You're adjusting low speed because the shock is moving slow, not because where the car's on the track, right? So that's a big deal. That alone is a big deal.
Yeah. Well, the videos I do on setups, I'm going to have to put more time into working on my nose and knees and slopes before I actually put the setups out there. Okay, I think it's a good video. Any last comments you want to throw in there?
I hope to do a few more with taking this stuff to a whole nother level. People get pretty excited about. So we'll see. We'll see how people respond to this one. If they like it, I would encourage people to actually leave some comments, right? Challenge me, right? So I'm just sharing what I'm learning. So, let's have a dialogue and participate. If there's interest, then I'll start sharing the whole nother next level of stuff. It's really cool that I've been coming across on this stuff, and it's the tip of the iceberg.
You got that look on your face like you're holding something back, you dog.
Oh yeah, the stuff that I've just come across is just absolutely mind-blowing stuff.
All right.
Super excited.
All right. I think this will put an end to guys that go to buy setups from setup shops where all the shocks are set to 10 or all the shocks are set to 5. I think this is going to really, everybody's going to eat this up. The shop builders, the DIY places like us. I think it's going to change the game.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of the setup shops because when I started the game, I believe the setup shops, there's a huge value in time savings, right? If I'm working a full-time job, those setup shops allow me to get a setup and go have a great race, right? I would encourage the setup shops to take a look at the content, reach out. We're happy to have a dialogue with them, and because, like I said, I believe they're a huge value to people who work for a living. Luckily, I don't.
Yeah, I know you don't. Are we? Rub it in.
We had that discussion, but yeah.
Are we going to see an updated Motec page workbook?
Yes, I am working on. I am, right. So I have. That's where it gets exciting. I have a lot of my new suspension pages in the Motec book, and the one that I've been working on. And I also need to go back and revisiting some of the aero calculations.
Okay, so we'll probably do a video on that Motec page when it comes out. Is that what we're thinking?
Yeah,
Okay.
and that'll be a large part of a few discussions there. Yeah.
Okay. That's okay. Let's wrap this up. Okay, guys. So Buster's Corner on YouTube. Subscribe, share. You can join us on our Facebook page, which is Buster's Corner on Facebook. On the Facebook page, you will find a link to our Discord. And in there, we have Tom's technical page, as we call it, Tom's technical page. In there, you can throw Tom questions and have a discussion with Tom in that page in the Discord. Put it up there. Tom will get back to you because he's so busy. And that's a good place. So if you want a discussion about this stuff, let's do it on Discord and not actually fill up the Facebook page. Buster's Corner is all about DIY setups. We build them, we share them. It's that easy. There's no cost to anybody for any stuff that we do. It's all us playing the game. Part of the game is being a race car driver. The other part is the car owner and the car builder and the crew chief and the setup guy. And I get a kick out of doing the setup stuff, and Tom's our chief engineer. That's all I got, Tom. Anything else?
That'll do it.
Give me a big wave. Thanks for watching Busters. Bye, guys. Happy race day.